Amen. This week we're learning Parashat Beshalach, and I know the topic is a very important topic. It's a hot topic. It's a question we all have. How do I stop suffering? Now, the first thing we have to understand is everybody is suffering in their own way. We sometimes think, well, the grass is greener on the other side, and not sometimes, more often than not, we do think that. The truth is God tailor makes a package of health, happiness, beauty, pain, and suffering specific to you, and to you, and to you, and for me, and each and every one. So this is something we're going to discuss, but it would be, in my opinion, cheap for me to just give you the secret without delving into it and proving it to you from our Torah portion. So let me take you to our Torah portion, give you a quick synopsis on all of the amazing drama that's going on, and how we're going to learn this from our Torah portion. So this week, Parashat Beshalach is no less interesting and fun to listen to and to watch than the previous two parashas. The previous two parashas dealt with the 10 plagues. The 10 plagues were an amazing sight, a great episode. There's been movies put out about it. It's something which it intrigues our interest because of the amazing miracles, wonder, splendor, power that God all displayed. This week is no less exciting. This week, Paro is having this dilemma. Right? He was able to be stubborn himself for the first 5 plagues, but then the next 5 plagues, he needed God's assistance to make him stubborn to say no. And we explained last week, it was make sure that Hashem said, stick to your guns. You made a choice. We're going to make you keep that choice throughout the whole 10 plagues. Now those 10 plagues are over. Paro is distraught by the death of his firstborn, and he says, Moses, Aaron, Jewish people, get out. However, his heart was not full with sending them away. And he deploys and he sends along with the Jewish people, with the nation, he sends some spies. He sends, let's see where they're going to go. Let's see how they're going to travel. Maybe they'll have some sort of hesitation and they'll want to come back, and then we could bring them back. 3 days into the Jewish people's travel, they get to a roadblock. They find themselves opposite the Sea of Reeds. And there seems to be hesitation. So these guys, these spies, were very excited. They run back to Paro. They said, they're lost. Let's get them. And quickly Paro hastens his nation, his army, and they all come running after the Jewish people in attempt to bring them back to Egypt. At that point, God tells Moses, Moses screams out to God, God, what do I do? God says, just go, keep on going in the water. And basically, God and Jewish people lure the Egyptians into the sea. And the sea just closes on them. Do you know that most opinions tell us, we would think when someone crosses the sea, they're coming from point A to point B. And imagine there's like a river or sea in between. That's not how it was. Most opinions say they just made like a U-turn. They went into the sea, the Egyptians followed them, and then they came back out the other way, and the Egyptians got caught in the middle. Now let me ask you a question. If you see now the sea open, and you see who you're running after run in, are you going to follow them? What's the chances? Oh, well, you're going to say, hey, I see dry land. Maybe I should go follow them. But these people have a track record. They had 10 plagues, which happened to us and not to them. Maybe something's different. It's like, imagine you're running after a thief. God forbid he comes and steals your purse, steals your watch, steals your car keys, and they run into a live volcano. Are you going to follow them? I hope not. This is similar to what was going on. But Paro and the Egyptians follow the Jewish people into the water. Why? And this explains our Chachamim, is the power of anger and the power of stubbornness. Unfortunately, it is a negative power. When a person is angry, when a person is stubborn, We do things which are irrational. We do things which, if we would stop and think about it, say, I would never do that. That makes no sense. That's not me. They say, if you want to get angry at someone, don't say you're not going to get angry. Just go, wash netilat yadayim, do negelwasser, and then do what you wanted to do. Because it cools you down. It makes you think about what you're going to do. And that is something that as human beings, we have the choice. Animals work fully by instinct. Whatever is in front of them, they either pounce on it, or they run, or they eat. They don't have that free will which human beings were given. We're able to overcome our instincts. And that's what makes the difference between a mature human being or not. So Paro was completely immature. He followed them in. He followed them in, and everybody goes down. There were many miracles that took place for the splitting of the sea. Besides for the sea splitting, which is in and of itself a miracle, many of our commentaries tell us that there wasn't only one path, there were actually 12 paths, one for each of the tribes. And other commentaries say not only did the water split like this, but the water was actually like an arch. They were like tunnels for the Jewish people to go through. The floor, I mean, if anyone's traveled and been to different seas, the seabed is not something pleasant to walk on. It's either muddy, rocky, reefy. No, the Midrash says it was paved with marble. Beautiful for the Yehudim to go on. So Paro sees this and he's like, I like the way this looks. The Jewish people are in there and they were traveling all night going through the water. Anytime they wanted to eat something, they just put their hands into the water, they pulled out whatever they wanted to eat. Miracles and miracles and miracles. The Talmud says that the amount of miracles and the amount of godliness that was displayed through the splitting of the sea, even the maidservants of the Jews who lived through that saw more of God than the coming of the future prophets of the Jewish people. A simple maidservant, an Egyptian maidservant, saw more of God at the splitting of the sea than even the greatest of prophets to come, to show how amazing this was. So they come, the Jewish people leave, come out of the water, and the water crashes down on the Egyptians. The only Egyptian who was not in the water was Paro. God wanted to teach him a full lesson. God wanted to make sure that he sees everything that he did wrong, all the mistakes he made. The Jewish people are not perfect. We're not perfect. No one's perfect. Do you know what they were thinking when they were coming out? They were thinking, well, the same way that we are coming out of the water over here, maybe the Egyptians are coming out elsewhere. So, Hashem snaps his finger, kivyachol, as if, and all of the bodies of the Egyptians come up floating on the surface of the water, which is a miracle. When a person drowns, chas v'shalom, they sink. So that was to prove all the Egyptians died. Then, another miracle. The Jews, remember, they left Egypt with a tremendous amount of wealth, because Abraham was promised that his descendants would leave. The Talmud says the amount of wealth that was collected at the ocean, by the sea, after the splitting of the sea, from the Egyptians, was multiple times more than what they took out of when they left Egypt. But now, Moses finds himself in a predicament. He sees the Jewish people all lined up by the shore, collecting all the gold, all the silver, all the jewels, all of the weapons that are being left, that were left by the Egyptians, and God washed them up all on the shore. And he had to fight with them and push them. Guys, we didn't come out to get money. We came to go receive the Torah. And then he finally gets them to sing the famous Az Yashir. We sing Az Yashir every single day. It's a shirah. It's a beautiful song that not only does Moses say it off the cuff, through obviously nivuah, divine inspiration, prophecy, but each and every one of the Jews sang along. It's not like they passed out papers, okay, everyone, we're on line 5 now, join us. Okay, we're line 10, join us. No, everyone was able to sing together, and that was a big miracle of prophecy God gave to each and every one, so they could all sing their praise and thanks to God. The Shira is something that our Chachamim tell us, if you sing it daily with simcha, it is a segula. It is guaranteed that you will find happiness in your life. Because the same way as the Jews were being pursued, and they were through their own hardships and their exile, and then through that they had their salvation, and they sang it besimcha, in joy, so to us in our own lives, when we are able to open the siddur in the morning and sing the Az Yashir with joy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, are you really joyous? You're really happy? We're going to give you some more. And that is a beautiful thing. There's one line which the Zera Shimshon analyzes in the Az Yashir, which is a one of its kind. I'm going to read you it in Hebrew, I'll read it to you in English, and we're going to see something absolutely fascinating in a couple moments. In chapter 15, verse 9, it says as follows, Amar Oyev, the enemy said, Erdof asig ahalek shalal. I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoils. Okay, this is Paro with his stubbornness, and I'm coming and I'm running in after the Jews. If you would pay attention to the verse, the first 5 words of the verse all start with the letter Aleph. Amar, Oyev, Erdof, Asig, Ahalek. That doesn't happen anywhere else. The Zera Shimshon says, is there any deeper meaning to the first 5 letters, the first 5 words starting with the letter Aleph? He says, of course there is. Do we take anything for granted in our Torah? Every letter, every word, every space has a specific meaning. So listen to his interpretation. He says as follows. The Egyptian exile was supposed to be a total of 430 years. If you count from when Abraham had the covenant, the Brit Ben Abetarim with God, he was 70 years old. Fast forward to the date of Exodus, it was exactly 430 years. God had mercy on him. And he said, we'll shorten it. So if you would calculate 400 years, that would take you to the time of when Isaac was born, when Abraham was 100. And then said, God said, we'll make it even shorter. It'll be only 210 years physically in Egypt. And then he was even more merciful. He said, we're only going to allow the last 86 years of your exile in Egypt to be the ones which are of suffering. That was the year Miriam was born. Miriam was 86 years old at the time of Exodus, because those 86 last years were the most suffering. They were the hardest. They were the most bitterest. That was her name. Miriam means mar. Her parents named her after the state that the Jewish people were in bitterness. Chachamim tell us only those 86 years were bitter. God has many names. One of God's names is Elokim. Elokim is God's way that He displays Midat Hadin, judgment. Take a wild guess. The numerical value of the name Elokim is 86. Because God brought down judgment only 86 years out of the 430. Here's something wild. If you would take 430 and divide it by 86, you would get 5. That means, the Zera Shimshon explains, that the Jewish people only got 1/5 of what they were supposed to have as exile during their exile in Egypt. Again, 86 times 5 is 430. So they only got 20% of what they were supposed to have. Why does God free them then? God frees them then because if He would not taken out then, they would have stooped down and been stuck in their level of impurity. They were at the 49th level of impurity. One more moment, if God wouldn't have taken them out, they would have stayed there forever. So God intervened. God pulled them out. However, explains Zera Shimshon, God pulled them out, but that means they still owe 4/5 of the exile. If they were decreed to have 430 and they only had 86, well, you've got 4 times left of exile to go through. And if we go and we see how many more exiles the Jewish people were going to have, was exactly another 4. I want to share with everyone this evening the beginning of chapter 7 in Sefer Daniel. Daniel has a prophecy. He is obviously a prophet, a very righteous man. And God shows him the upcoming exiles that are going to come for the Jewish people. And the first one says as follows. The beginning of chapter 7, verse 3, and 4 huge beasts were coming up out of the sea, each one different than the other. So his prophecy is 4 different beasts, and each beast alludes to one of the upcoming exiles. The first one like a lion that had wings of an eagle, until its wings were plucked and taken from the earth and stood like a man, and the heart of a mortal was given it. And this was the first exile, the exile which alludes to the Babylonian exile. The second, and behold, the second beast, resembling a bear, stood up with ribs in its teeth. That alludes to the Persian exile. The third exile, and behold, there was another one, a leopard with 4 wings of a bird, and had 4 heads. And that alludes to the Greek Empire. And then the fourth one doesn't even give us a name. It says the most dreadful one. It's this beast that says over here, it had huge iron teeth. It ate and crushed and trampled the rest with its feet. The rest of the 3 other beasts, this unknown one came and trampled them. And this one alludes to the Roman exile. So, Daniel was prophesied that there is going to be 4 more exiles after the Egyptian one. And that was each of those portions which Bnei Israel were saved from Egypt. Remember, they had only 1/5 of the time, and the other 4 portions were to come. Let's fast forward. We're going to eat in a couple months from now. We're going to have matzah on the Pesach Seder. Why do we eat matzah? Well, we know. The Jewish people were in a rush. Moses tells them, we got to leave right now. Their dough that they were preparing to bake and let it rise to go was still flat, unleavened. So they took it with them. How many times do we eat matzah? How many kezait? Kezait is a portion. How many portions of matzah do we eat on the Seder night? 4. We have motzi, we have matzah, we have the korech, and we have the afikoman. The Zera Shimshon says, you know why we eat 4 parts of matzah? Because we are thanking God and saying, because you took us out in a rush, which alludes to the matzah, we thank you that you didn't let us stay there. We even thank you for giving us those other exiles, because it's better to have that pain or that exile dispersed rather than all at once. Comes Paro. Amaro yever dof asig. That's Paro. That's the enemy saying, I got to run after you. Paro's running after the Jewish people saying, you guys don't leave now. You only fulfilled 1/5 of your debt. You need to be here for 430 years. You've only had 86 hard years. Paro's coming to Moses and he's telling him, wait, you can't leave yet. You still have 4/5 of the time to stay in slavery. And this is the reason why there is those 4 aleph at the beginning of each of those words, of those 5 words at the beginning of that verse. Now, they come out of Egypt. They come out of the water. And Moses sings, as we said, Az Yashir. You know what the women did? The women pull out instruments and they start singing and dancing and praising God. Did you ever ask yourself, one of 2 questions. Either where are the men's instruments, or where did the women get their instruments from? Like, what's going on? Listen to a fascinating interpretation. Rashi tells us something that we might overlook. Rashi reminds us, do you know why the Jewish people were freed from Egypt? It was all in merit of the righteous women. It was the women of the Jewish nation which freed them from the bondage, which pulled them out from slavery. We know how much doubt there were by the men. Should we leave? Should we not? Remember, 80% of the Jews didn't even leave Egypt. They died in the plague of darkness. But the women were righteous. The women were believers. They were such believers that when Moses and Aaron are telling them, guys, we got to leave. So what does a mother have to do? Count the kids, make sure she takes what she has, whatever she started baking, i.e. the matzahs, let's take them, we gotta go. They said, wait, I need to get my guitar, I need to get my violin, my tambourine. my drum set, my piano. We need to take that along with us. Mommy, what are you taking that for? We're on the run. You know what she said? I'm going to need it soon. The women knew that there was going to be a day very soon that they're going to have to dance and rejoice and thank God. They wanted to be prepared. They brought instruments along with them. It's not that they just casted them and fabricated them right there. No, they brought them along because they were anticipating something great. They knew something great was going to happen. They wanted to be ready for it. And that shows us how wise, how connected women are, our mothers, our wives, our daughters. Invest in that. Use that. Sometimes your wife tells you something. Sometimes your mother tells you something. Stop, think. Maybe they do have a stronger connection. This is off topic completely, but I'll just say, think of it. When boys are born not perfect. They need to have a circumcision to become perfect in God's eyes. Women are born perfect. They don't need a circumcision. Their souls are very close and connected. They were the ones who caused the exodus of Egypt for the Jewish nation. Always remember that. So they get on moving. After Moses finally convinces the Jewish people to leave all of the spoils of the war by the siege, take what you have and let's go, a new hurdle comes. And the Jewish people now start to develop a habit of our greatest description of a Jew. And they started to complain, unfortunately. They started to kvetch. And they come and they leave the sea and they start crying to Moses, we don't have water, we're thirsty. Did you and God pull us out to die of thirst, to dehydrate ourselves to death? That's a very harsh thing to say. There was water, but it was bitter. They came to a place called Mara. It was called Mara, bitter, because the water was bitter there. They couldn't drink. You can't drink salt water. God tells Moses, don't worry. I'm going to give you a stick. You take the stick, you throw it in the water becomes sweet, and they drank. Perfect. At this point, I want to quote to you the verse, and then at this point I want to share something the Me'am Loez, one of the great commentaries on the Torah, shares with us. I think this is going to blow us off our rocker. The Torah says, Vayitzak el Hashem, so Moses screams out praise to God. Vayoreo Hashem etz. God shows him a piece of tree. Vayashlech el hamayim. Vayimtaku hamayim. He throws it in the water becomes sweet. Sham sam lo choku mishpat v'sham nisau. And over there, God teaches him a lesson and God tests him. The next verse, Vayomer, and God now tells Moses to tell the Jewish people, Im shamoa tishma lekol Hashem. If the Jewish people will listen to the voice of God, Ve'ashar be'enav taseh, and they will do the straight, right thing, righteous thing. Ve'azanta b'mitzav, they will hear the mitzvot. Ve'shamarta kol hokav, and they will fulfill everything, even those that they don't understand. All, kol ha'machala asher samti b'mitzrayim, all of the disease and the pain and the suffering that God put in Egypt, lo asim alecha, God will not give that to the Jewish people. Ki ani Hashem rofecha. Hashem says, I am your healer. So they were complaining for the water. They were given it. Moses puts a stick in and it becomes sweet. They drink it. And then Moses gives them rebuke and says, don't complain. Don't worry. If you follow in the path of Torah, you're strong, you're steadfast with the Lord, you will not have a problem. All of that problem and sickness and disease God placed on Egypt, He won't bring it upon you. He's your healer. Take it easy. Don't worry. The Me'am Loez says God takes Moses aside and He gives him an education in herbology. He pulls him aside and He shows him all the different herbs, plants, roots, minerals, and He tells him what each one's characters are. If you eat this, it's fatal. If you crush this and eat it this way, it helps with this disease, and this plant with this disease, and this root with this disease, and this mineral helps with this, and this one's dangerous for that. Each one, He showed him everything. And then he tests him. And he says, okay, Visham Nisau, the Torah says. He tests him. So go through each one. What's this herb and this mineral and this tree? Each and every one. To the point where that transmission that Moses had was also transmitted to King Solomon. King Solomon wrote one of the most fascinating books. I think it's the second greatest book after the Torah itself. The Sefer was called Sefer HaRefuot. Have you heard of this book? The Talmud speaks about this. Sefer HaRefuot means the book of healing. King Solomon was the wisest man to ever live. Moses was the greatest prophet, the closest to God. King Solomon was the wisest. He wrote a book called the Book of Healing. And in this book he writes all 613 mitzvot, the positive ones and the negative ones. And he writes which body part, we know we have 613 body parts, which body part corresponds to which mitzvah. And if you will fulfill that mitzvah, you'll be healed in that body part. And he also writes which natural herb, mineral, tree, plant, or concoction can you take to also heal whatever that is that a person is sick with. This was literally, I'm going to make a bad joke, it was literally the New Testament. Right? The Bible told us everything. And this little smaller book that had all these 613 special remedies and secrets, the problem was the Jewish people, they weren't resorting to what they had to do. Let's say a person had eye problems. And let's say the cure to eye problems was either a certain herb or keeping Shabbos, keeping Shabbat. Person said, keeping Shabbat, that's 25 hours, that's once a week. Taking an herb, that's 2 seconds. So people were going for the alternate medicine. Or people would only fulfill whatever they have an issue with. Person had an issue with their right shoulder, and a certain mitzvah helps you with that. Person would only be careful to do that, but everything else they wouldn't do. So King Solomon Chizkiyahu HaMelech, he takes the Sefer Refuot of King Solomon and he buries it. And this is one of the 3 things the sages supported him on and agreed with him for doing. And since then, we don't know what they are. I know, that would be the best seller. Are you quickly searching on Google if you could find it? It's out of print. It's buried. It is extinct, and it's to our own good. Because if not, we wouldn't fulfill all the mitzvot. And if not, we just run for the medicine instead of going to the core of what the problem is. God shows all of this to Moses, and he tests him on it. And then God says one thing very powerful. He says, all of this is not important. Meaning a human being needs to take care of themselves. Physically, they need to take care of their health. You need to sleep right, you need to eat right, you need to work out, you need to take care of yourself. But all of that does not need any attention if you are 100% on board with God's Word, with the Torah, with fulfilling and doing everything that it says in the Torah. Now, no one's there. Who's there? Nobody's there. We do need to have our involvement and our special connection to the physical aspects of life. We need to eat well, sleep well, and do everything we have to do. But in a perfect world, a complete tzaddik, God tells Moses, doesn't need any of these, all of these remedies. Who gave power to these herbs and these minerals and these remedies? I did, God says. So I can give that power directly to the Jew when they're steadfast in the Torah and the mitzvot and connection to me, God says. Now don't try this at home. We are not that 100% tzaddik or tzaddiket. We're not. We need to invest in both realms. We need to take care of our physical well-being. We also need to take care of our spiritual well-being. There's one exception. The Ben Ish Chai, I'm sure we heard of the Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. He says something amazing. This was over 100 years, he writes. Over 100 years ago, he wrote that the doctors of the time, the medical professionals said, a human being needs between 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night. Between 6 to 8 hours of sleep. If a person sleeps less than 6 hours, it's not healthy. And if a person sleeps more than 8 hours, believe it or not, that's not healthy. Till today, that's proven. Over 100 years ago, Ben Ish Chai tells us this. Ben Ish Chai gives one exception. He says, a person who takes away from their sleep to study Torah, to do the right thing, even if you sleep less than 6 hours, it will not be detrimental to your health. So if you stay up late at night singing Tehillim, or reading from the Torah, or listening to a Torah class, even though you'll sleep less than 6 hours, that will not be detrimental to your health. That's how we see great tzaddikim. They don't sleep 6 hours, they sleep 3-4 hours. How do they survive? How do they live to 90, 100 years old? It's this special promise. The Torah heals us. But now we're going to delve into, one more thing I wanted to say. The gematria, the Me'amloa says, the numerical value of the acronym for the 10 plagues. We say this every year. We say Detzach, Detzach, Adash, Ba'achav. That is the 10 letters of the acronym of the 10 plagues. Those letters equals 510 numerically. That is the same numerical value as Kol HaMachala Asher, let me read it again, Asher Samti B'Mitzrayim. All of the disease and the pain that God put in Egypt equals 510, which is the same numerical value as the plagues, as the acronym of the plagues that God sent them. God's saying, all of the plagues, all of the disease that I sent to Egypt, I will not send to you if you are strong in Torah and in mitzvot. Now, for tonight's question. The Zera Shimshon looks at this verse and he says, 1 second, I don't get it. If God says He's not going to bring upon us all of that disease and that plague, why 2 words later does He say, I am God your healer, I'm God your doctor? If I'm not going to get sick, if you're not going to bring that disease on me, what do I need you as my doctor for? The Zera Shimshon said that doesn't make sense. It's either you're not going to bring it on us, or the sickness is going to come and you'll heal us. But we don't need both. So he gives 2 answers. The first answer, he quotes a law that is codified in the Shulchan Aruch. Listen to this very sad law. Imagine someone comes up to you and they physically damage you. And after physically damaging you, you say, I'm going to now sue you, or I'm going to take you to Beit Din, and you're going to have to heal me. What if the man says, at Beit Din or on the spot, I'm a doctor, I could heal you? He's not believed. Thank you. You damaged me, I don't want you to be the one to heal me. You actually have to, the Shulchan Aruch, the halakha is that the person has to pay, even though he's a professional in that. Let's say you have a heart surgeon who for some reason hurts someone and damages their heart physically. And then says, I can do the surgery to fix it up. No, excuse me. You did the detriment, you did the damage, you need to pay and get someone else to take care of this. Based on that, the Zera Shimshon says that the one who brings upon the pain cannot be the healer. That means that God does not bring pain or suffering onto Jewish people, because He is our doctor, because He is our healer. So how do we understand suffering? How do we understand when the Jewish people have to endure something? He says this and explains the Midrash. The Midrash says that when God brings pain or suffering onto the Jewish people, He first creates the antidote, He creates the remedy, and then the suffering, the pain, the sickness, the illness comes. He does that specifically for the Jewish people, because what happens? The cure is already created. Then God has to sometimes teach us a lesson, and He's not going to be the one that heals us. We're going to be healed automatically because the cure was already created. Lo alenu, someone who has cancer, who we don't have the cure for yet. Imagine if when going into it, you know that the cure already exists and it's on its way. Opposed to waiting to when are we going to find it and how are we going to use it. That's the difference between when God punishes the Jews and the Goyim. When God punishes the Goyim, there's no cure brought. It's full out, it's punishment, and then cure, yes, no, maybe, that's later on. But for the Yehudim, He first brings the cure, He brings the remedy, and then He brings the punishment, and then the remedy automatically comes on and helps. This is his first interpretation. But tonight's greatest novelty that we're going to share, and this is going to answer our question, is the Zera Shimshon's second answer to this question. The Zera Shimshon reminds us, why did God bring the 10 plagues and all that disease onto the Egyptian people? It was number 1 as punishment, number 2 as revenge. The Egyptians were now being punished for the way they treated the Jewish people, and God was taking revenge on Pharaoh and on the Egyptian people for the way they treated the Jewish people. The Egyptians needed a lesson served to them. Now God comes and says, in the same fashion that the Egyptians were punished through punishment and revenge, the Jewish people will never be punished. Hashem does not send suffering, illness, disease to Jews out of revenge. Rather, continue the pasuk, how does God send it? Ki ani Hashem rofecha. He sends it as a doctor. He sends it to heal us. God is our healer. He heals us physically, but more importantly, the Zera Shimshon says, He heals us spiritually. Why would God send a disease or a sickness or a plague or hardship onto the Jewish people? It's only to ring a bell, to wave a flag and say, hey, you're not following what I told Moses to tell you. You're not following the word of the Torah. You're not learning Torah. You're not acting properly between each other. You're not eating kosher. You're not keeping Shabbat. You're not stopping to speak Lashon Hara. If you do that, you won't have these issues. What does God do? He gives us a chance. He doesn't take us right away. He sends messages, and those messages hurt. And that's okay. You know why it's okay? Because when you realize that it is a form of healing rather than a form of revenge or destruction, then it's easier to take that tough love. We all ask. In our life, we ask at one time and another, God, why me? Why do I need to suffer? What did I do wrong? If we stop and we think, hey, maybe this is a message. Maybe God is talking to me. For sure He's talking to me. You ever wondered on that day that you bit your tongue or you bit your lip and you're bleeding or it hurt? Did I talk too much today? Did I say something I shouldn't have said? Did I speak Lashon Hara? I'm not saying always, but these are messages God sends us, and He sends us the hardship and the suffering as a cure to help us and promote us to do teshuvah. When we look at life and when we look at our suffering as it's revenge, as God is hating on us, then we can fall into depression and we can fall into this state of we have no hope, and then we start losing our belief. But if we look at the suffering and the pain that God sends us, and we look at it as God sending me a message, God is spiritually healing me. How's He going to heal me? He's going to heal me by pressing some of my physical buttons and trying to shake me up and slap me into shape. Ezu chacham haro'et hanolad. Who's a wise person, the Mishnah tells us? Someone who sees what's coming up. If we know that our struggles and our hardships are there to better us, so let's use those sufferings and those struggles to grow, to be better, to be a better mother, a better father, a better sibling, a better Jew, a better employee, a better employer, a better neighbor, a better spouse. Let those sufferings, sometimes they are individual suffering, family, communal, national, they are all there to heal you, your family, the Jewish nation, and the world. Stop looking at our suffering and our painship as God hating on us. No, He's healing us. He's helping us. He's helping us wake up. So to answer our question, and I hope I'm not letting anyone down, how do I get rid of my suffering? Is turn your suffering into an opportunity of growth. Turn your suffering into a message from God. Understand that our suffering is God actually healing us. Lahavdil elef haftalot, as a difference. Chemotherapy is something which can cure cancer, at least if it's caught at an early stage. But chemotherapy hurts. In a spiritual way, when God sends us disease, health issues, oppression, financial struggles, social, emotional struggles, that is a spiritual chemotherapy to our souls. It's up to us to rationally see what God is sending and make the right decision. Start looking at God and what He sends you, and start looking at the suffering and the oppression and the pain that comes our way as a healing mechanism, and transcend your sufferings to opportunities of growth and being a better person and making the right choice. May the merit of the Zera Shimshon bless us all, bless our families, and take this message to heart and really believe. If you believe God is your healer, if you believe He is your doctor, He can do you no harm. When you select a doctor, you select him because you are trusting him or her with your life. If you trust God with your life, that means anything that comes your way, even if it hurts, it is only to heal you. You go see a doctor, you say you want to lose weight, you say you're having a health issue. They'll tell you fast. They'll tell you stop eating sweets. They'll tell you to work out. All that hurts. But since you trust your doctor, you believe in your doctor, you do it even though it hurts. All the more so God. When He sends stuff that hurt us, it's for our own good. It's for our spiritual cleansing, and it's for waking us up to be on the right path. May God help us and enlighten us to endure the pain and suffering that He sends us. Hopefully it's not too much. Hopefully we get the message sooner than later. But hopefully we take it and we use it for growth. We use it for inspiration, and we use it to be the best Jew we can be. Amen.